Hello, this is Matthew Kane, Family Law Facilitator for Siskiyou County Superior Court. This video tutorial is for the California Property Declaration Form, which is Judicial Council Form number FL-160. This form can be used to disclose the property that is at issue. It may be used by the petitioner or the respondent, and it may be used for community or separate property. So let's talk about how to fill this form out. It starts with your name in the upper left corner. Don't worry about firm name, that's for attorneys. Then you will put in your address. You'll put in your city, the state, so let's just say California, and the zip code. So I use the zip code for Wairika, but you will use the zip code for where you live. It is helpful to put in the telephone number and email address. If you don't have one, that's fine. Don't worry about this line that says attorney for. Again, if you have an attorney, he or she will fill this out and will take care of that. Otherwise, don't worry about it. You will have to put in the name and address of the court where you are filing. If you are filing this in Siskiyou County, which is where I am, you will type in Siskiyou. Our address is and the branch name is family/civil. Okay, the next part is the petitioner and respondent. The petitioner is the person who filed the first papers. So whoever started the divorce or legal separation is the petitioner and will always be the petitioner. And the respondent is so that's a little bit of a clunky way to think about it, but the respondent basically is the um, the person who is being divorced or separated from. It's you could think of it as if you know who filed the papers, then the petitioner is the other person. Um, okay, let's move on. So like I said at the start, this can be used as petitioner's form or it can be used as respondent's form. So if you are the petitioner, mark the box next to petitioner. If you are the respondent, mark the box next to you. Um, it can be used for community property or quasi-community property. Um, Essentially, community property is everything that you acquired during the time of the marriage. This includes property or valuables or assets that you acquired out of state still can make up the community assets. So if you are filling out this form to include the community assets, then mark the box next to community and quasi-community property declaration. If you're using this form to inform the court and the other party what items of separate property exist, mark the box for separate property. Again, an easy way to think of separate property is everything that you had before the marriage or that you received as a gift or inheritance during the marriage would be separate property. This form overall can be used to list almost every type of asset or valuable that you can possibly have. There are some pre-typed categories of asset, and at the end down here it will say other assets, and then you can use your imagination to include anything that wasn't included above. So let's just look at how to fill out this form, and we'll use real estate as an example. Um, the you'll be able to fill out the rest of the form in the same way, but let's just start with this. So let's just say that you have a house at, I don't know if there is a 1, 2, 3, 4 Main Street in Wairika, but if there is, I'm sorry, I'm just using your house as an example then. Um, anyway, so you'll put the address, you'll put the date you acquired it. So maybe you acquired it 2010. The gross fair market value would be, for a house, that would be the value that you could sell the house on the market. So maybe your house is worth 200,000, and the amount of debt, maybe you owe 100,000, which means that the net fair market value, which is the amount that you would receive after you sold it and you paid off the debt, in this case would be $100,000, because it's worth 200 minus the 100 that you owe is the 100,000 that it is, would be your net fair market value. Okay, column F asks you to divide the value of the property between petitioner and respondent. If you are filling out this form for community property, the goal of California community property law is to divide assets evenly, or to divide the entire community estate evenly, which means that maybe the petitioner is going to get all of one thing and the respondent is going to get all of something else, and when you add those two together it comes out about even. But let's just stick to the house for now. So the law would suggest that petitioner's share would be half of the net fair market value, and that respondent's share would be the other half of the net fair market value. So in this example, if you had a house that was worth 200,000 and you had $100,000 in debt, and this was your only asset, you had nothing else to put down on this declaration form, then the law would suggest that the fair distribution would be $50,000 to each party. You, as the person filling out this form, can suggest other amounts, but you will have to prove why the other amounts are fair and would work out. Okay, so just to kind of go back to dividing things up if you have more than just one asset. So now let's say that you do have a savings account at Chase Bank, and you don't know when you acquired it, so you'll just leave this blank, and you have $100,000 in your savings account because you're doing pretty good for yourself, and the fair market value of that would be 100 because there's no debt, that's just money. So now you decide that you want to have the entire savings account, and to make up for it, you will let the respondent have the entire house. So you end up in a position where you have 100,000 here and respondent has 100,000 there, and you now have divided the community assets evenly, even though each asset is not divided evenly. The goal is just that overall what the respondent gets and what the petitioner gets should equal out. Okay, let's scroll to page 3, which is important because on page 3 you can list out debts, for example student loans, if you owe back taxes, If you have credit cards, you can identify what those amounts are. So let's say you have a Capital One and the date incurred, maybe you're still spending on it, so date incurred is ongoing, and the total owed is, well, let's see, maybe you owe 2,000. So you can ask to divide up that $2,000 between petitioner and respondent so that maybe each of you is going to pay $1,000 of it. Like I said, the goal is fairness and relatively even distribution. So list all of the debts, list all of the assets, try to make it so that they come out evenly if this is a um, community property declaration. If you are filing this for separate property, then these values do not have to be even. They have to just match what your perception of the asset is and whether that asset should be entirely yours or entirely the other party's. The end is to print your name, then sign the form, and if you are filing this with your petition, then make sure that it gets filed at the same time. If you are filing this as part of your response, then file it then. And that is it. Thank you.